Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Eleusinian Society. Today I will be running through my list of the top 5 Gnostic Gospels or texts. A Gnostic text is a non-canonical religious piece of literature that was written in the early period Christianity and is not a part of the common and accepted Bible. I will be reviewing each of these books from a non-religious standpoint to ensure that no faith bias is present. Without further delay, here is my top 5 list of Gnostic Gospels worth reading. Number 5. The Gospel of Mary. The Gospel of Mary is a 5th century non-canonical Christian text written in Sahidic Coptic and is one of many writings in the Berlin Codex. It was recovered in Akhmim, Egypt in 1896. The Berlin Codex is bound with wooden boards and covered with a curious leather, unlike most tanned leather used at the time. Some of the other texts in this video will also be from the Berlin Codex, but for now we will focus on this gospel. The identity of the Mary whose namesake is in the title of this text is not exactly known. However, there are 3 options. The simplest answer would be that Mary was a fairly common name at the time the text was written, and it could be any woman named Mary. The second, and least probable, is Mary, the mother of Jesus. The third and most widely accepted among Gnostic followers is that Mary is Mary Magdalene, as she followed and supported Christ's ministry, becoming the 13th apostle. This can be proven in the final parts of the text, when Levi defends the character of Mary, saying, "The Savior knows her well, which is why he loved her over any of us." The text is not fully complete, so the story begins in the middle of what is interpreted as a post-crucifixion Christ, addressing his disciples and answering the questions that they have regarding sin. The Savior then leaves, and anxious feelings overtake the room as the disciples discuss among themselves. Mary, seeing the condition the group had been left in, offers words of comfort. Peter then instructs Mary to share any secrets or secret teachings the Savior may have shared with her in their personal talks, citing, "Sister, we know that the Savior loved you more than the rest of the women. Tell us the words of the Savior which you remember, which you know, but we do not, nor have we heard them." She then discusses a time when the Savior talked about visions with her. In conversation, the Savior teaches that one's internal being is composed of spirit and soul, and a sort of third mind that is between the two, which sees the vision. The text is then missing around 4 pages. In the next page, Mary is no longer recalling her conversation with Jesus, but instead describing the revelation given to her in a vision, which describes an ascent of a soul as it passes on to its final rest, and then engages in dialogue with 4 powers that try to stop it. Throughout this text, Peter, who is largely considered to be one of the closest disciples of Jesus, has a negative and degrading attitude towards Mary, almost as if he is jealous that he shared secret teachings with her over himself. This text gives a different insight into the personal relationships of the disciples after Jesus left, and also highlights a personal relationship between Christ and Mary Magdalene that we don't see in the canon Gospels. Number 4. The Gospel of Judas Iscariot. The Gospel of Judas Iscariot seems like a book straight out of some demonic cult's repertoire. However, this book actually gives a great duality into the accepted Gospel stories regarding Judas. This text was written in the 1st or 2nd century AD, and is alleged to have been written by Benjamin Iscariot, the son of Judas. It brings forth a different point of view as to the time before the death of Christ. In the accepted Gospels, Judas is known as the great deceiver who traded in his leader's life for pieces of silver. It also states that after the betrayal, Judas commits suicide. But the Gospel of Judas states that the Pharisees wanted Jesus dead and were devising a plan to incriminate him on false claims. Judas, who caught wind of the plot from overhearing Roman soldiers, offers pieces of silver to the guards in exchange for the safe passage of Jesus and his entourage out of Jerusalem. Judas then has a dialogue with Christ, revealing to him that he made a deal with the guards for safe passage, in which Christ becomes upset with Jesus and states that his death is not an option but a destiny. The guards then capture Jesus in the garden, and everything goes just as the canon Gospels state, with one exception. Judas runs from Jerusalem out of embarrassment of his brash decisions to help save Christ behind his back, and he goes to live in Qumran with the Essenes, where he lived out his days until 60 AD, when the Roman legions destroyed their temple and killed Judas inside of it. In the last weeks before his passing, Benjamin, who barely recognized his own father, had allegedly visited him and recorded down the stories contained in this gospel. In my opinion, this gospel makes sense, as Judas paying off guards for coins in exchange for betrayal would not make sense due to the guards already knowing where Jesus was staying and the Pharisees already having enough information to charge Christ for what they considered blasphemy. Number 3. The Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is an apocalyptic text which follows the teachings of Enoch, the great-grandfather of the famed Bible legend Noah. Through this text, readers are able to have a deeper understanding of the origins of demons and angels, and about why the great flood ascribed in the book of Genesis was not only morally right, but also necessary. The Book of Enoch was one of the texts uncovered in the deserts near the Dead Sea, appropriately named the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was widely known and followed by early Christians and New Testament-era Jews. The origin of this book dates to around the 3rd or 2nd century BC, and was written over the course of around 100 to 200 years. The use of this book in religion is speculated with mixed reviews, with some Jewish and Christian groups still using it and some not. The book contains 5 smaller books: the Book of Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch. There is a lot of content in this text, so I will sum up each book as briefly as I can. The Book of the Watchers regards the fall of the Watchers, the angels who fathered the Nephilim. It also describes some of Enoch's travels through the heavenly bodies. The Book of Parables is based off the Book of Watchers, but gives foresight into the fate of the fallen angels and of the humanly rulers as well. This section is sort of a Revelation-style book, with themes of final judgment and apocalypse. The Astronomical Book features the movement of heavenly bodies and of the firmament, which was revealed to Enoch in his travels to heaven, accompanied by the angel Uriel. The Dream Visions are a compendium of one vision, which foretells the history of Israel up until the Maccabean Revolt, and is even said to have been written before the book of Genesis. The final book is the Epistle of Enoch, in which Enoch gives lectures and teachings on different topics under the umbrella of personal faith. Number 2. The Apocryphon of John. The Apocryphon of John, also known as the Secret Book of John, is a Gnostic text attributed to the Apostle John, and it dates to the 2nd century AD. Its main thesis is the appearance of Christ to John, where he reveals secret knowledge in the time after Jesus rose to heaven. A line in the early parts of this book sets the character's identity by stating, "The teaching of the Savior, and the revelation of the mysteries and the things hidden in silence, even these things which he taught John, his disciple." The author is instantly specified as John, the brother of James, who are the sons of Zebedee. There are 4 copies known in existence. Little was known of this text until 1945, when a cache of papyrus codices were discovered in the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt, and a more complete copy was found. The text follows the Apostle John, who after the death of Christ is wrought with fear and anxiety. Jesus then appears to John, calms his stress, and takes the image of many forms before revealing to John secrets of cosmological nature. In these teachings, the Supreme Being, which encompasses all things, is named Monad. Monad uses mental alchemy to create a feminine divine being called Barbelo, who is the first of a class of ethereal beings called Aeons. Monad and Barbelo procreate to produce more Aeons into existence. One of these Aeons is called Sophia, who on her own free will goes against the wishes of Monad and creates a sort of demonic being called Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth is said to be the first of a race of beings called Archons. or demons. When the Aeons learn of this bastardized creation, they seek to destroy Yaldabaoth, but he and the other Archons had another plan. They tried to recreate themselves in the way Sophia created Yaldabaoth, but ended up creating Adam instead, the first human. In a similar fashion to the Book of Enoch, we learn of the creation of angels and demons and their function in the universe. It is an interesting read and provides an alternative to the canonized creation story of Genesis. Number 1. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas. The last on our list is the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, a text which provides light into a period of time that most Christians forget doesn't exist. The book was authored by a man only known as Thomas the Israelite in the 2nd century AD. Jesus is born in Bethlehem. Then the story skips to a child Jesus running from his parents to teach in the synagogues, and then, well, nothing. Until the age of 30. So many years of Jesus' life are lost to the lack of writings about it. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas provides an interesting view on a child Jesus and what would happen if a child is given the divine powers of God. The story follows a basic structure involving Christ's powers. First, he revives a dried fish back to life. Then he performs the first trifecta of miracles by breathing into clay and creating living birds, cursing a boy who causes him pain by turning him into a corpse instantly, and then cursing another boy who falls dead and then turns their parents blind. Jesus is then taught by his teacher, who asks him to recite the alphabet, to which he responds, "Not knowing the alpha by its nature, how can you teach another the beta?" Throughout this text, he continues to perform miracles, both in a positive and negative way. In one account, he even stretches a piece of wood so that Joseph may finish his project. It truly is a special book, which makes you think, is the text accurate and was removed by the Council of Nicaea out of fear that the childhood history of Jesus might taint the way people view him, as opposed to the more composed and stoic nature of Jesus in adulthood? Either way, it's an interesting read. When rereading the book for this video, I couldn't help but feel like any child with the powers of God would use them in uncontrollable ways. This has been my top 5 video of Gnostic Gospels worth reading. I really hope that you take the time to study and read every one of these to get a better understanding for what early Christians and Jews experienced in their religious life. I thank you for joining us on another edition of the Eleusinian Society. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to see more videos.